Hi lovely, and welcome to this week's live. Today we're going to be talking all about depression in the premenstrual phase of your cycle. So just before you come on your period, you start to feel really down. I'm going to be explaining why that happens, some little quick fixes to help, and some ways to treat the cause of this long term so you're not experiencing such intense symptoms. Now, depression is a really complex topic, of course, because people have really complex lives as well. So I really don't want to oversimplify anything that might be going on in your life or the strategies that we need to implement to help, especially if you're experiencing really serious depression. And I would always recommend working with a therapist or reaching out to a coach or whatever suits you if you're finding that this is becoming quite overwhelming and really affecting your quality of life. So I'm going to be majorly talking about those big themes or commonalities that I've noticed in myself, friends and family, clients, and sort of staying clear of specifics because, as I said, everyone's got so much different stuff going on. So first of all, just to talk about the causes of why this happens in our premenstrual phase, usually more so than any other point in our cycle. And so what happens in the first half of your cycle is you get this raise in estrogen and testosterone. It's kind of like your Beyonce hormone. You feel sexy, you want to go out and reproduce. That's kind of what your body is wanting you to do. Not true for everyone, of course, but that's what's kind of going on biologically. And then just after ovulation, estrogen and testosterone suddenly just drop off. So you get this creep up and then they just drop off. And that's all to do with kind of the reproductive process, but I won't dive into that today. So you might notice that you're like halfway through your cycle, your period's like 12 to 14 days away, and you just suddenly feel really down. So that's why, you're welcome. I was very excited when I understood why this was happening. And then after that drop off, progesterone starts to really creep up again. Now, progesterone is an interesting hormone. Some people love it, some people hate it. And what it is a progestation hormone. So it's kind of preparing you for pregnancy, just in case you did get pregnant while you were ovulating. So it's going to really slow you down. It slows down your metabolism. You feel like eating more food just in case you've got another mouth to feed, maybe. It makes you feel more introverted, so you don't really want to go out into the world because there's possible dangers out there that could affect your pregnancy. So there's kind of this coming home to yourself, which I actually personally really love. I'm quite a chill, relaxed person. So I really like this time in my cycle. But if you're really like get up and go, love your like high intensity workouts and having a really busy day, if you're that kind of person, which there's nothing wrong with either or, it's just how people are. Some are more yin, some are more yang. And people can, those kind of really high activity people can really struggle with this phase of the cycle because it's difficult to calm down and not calm down, that's not the right word, but come home to yourself and just start to relax. And people can be quite hard on themselves for this, quite judgmental. They've not got the energy they had a few days ago. They don't understand why. So yeah, it's understandable that for some people this is really difficult. Whereas for me, that first half of the cycle where I've got all that estrogen and testosterone running through me can be a bit overwhelming, and actually it used to make me feel really anxious before I understood what was going on. So just knowing what kind of person you are can be really helpful in understanding why this phase might be difficult for you. But it's not just that, of course. You might be a relaxed person and be struggling with this phase, and I'm going to go a bit more into why that might be. So just to finish off the cycle part, just before your period, progesterone's creeped off, and then that drops off as well. So you've now got very little progesterone, which is your chiller, and very little estrogen, which is kind of your feel good, and very little testosterone, which is your high energy. So that's those kind of like 2 or 3 days before your period where you might feel really down, angry, irritable, mood swings. It all gets really intense. And that's why. So just having that understanding and doing a little bit of cycle tracking as well can be really, really helpful to know your body, know where you're at, and understand why you're experiencing various things, so that you don't feel so confused and hard on yourself about why that's happening. And hello to these two lovely people watching that have just joined. I can't see who you are, unfortunately, but hello. So moving on to some other kind of physical causes, we've got the foods that we eat. And people really underestimate how much of a difference the foods you eat makes to your mood. And that's because the vast majority of hormones are made by our little buddies, the friendly bacteria in the gut. So we really want to be nourishing them with foods that they love. And there's a few bad guys in there as well. So we don't really want to be feeding the bad guys, because they're going to produce some hormones that don't make us feel too good. So the bad guys love processed foods of any kind, chemicals, toxins. Gluten is a really big one for some people because it's like glue and it kind of lines the gut and basically stops all the interactions going on. It kind of clogs everything up a little bit. So even if you don't think you have a gluten intolerance, it can be really helpful just to cut it out for 2 or 3 weeks and just notice how you feel. Like if you feel better, awesome, cut down on the gluten. If you don't really notice a difference at all, then maybe you're fine with gluten. But yeah, definitely something to experiment with. And just generally grains as well, we do have to really process those. Carbs, sugar, alcohol, all of these things that we kind of know aren't good for us but don't really know why. So this is a big reason why. It's because it feeds the bacteria in the gut that doesn't make us feel too good. So on the last physical point, we've got not moving the body enough. And this is because our vascular system, so where the blood's pumped round, has the pump, obviously, of the heart. Whereas your lymphatic system, which is responsible for clearing all the toxins out of your body, it doesn't have a pump. So it needs to be moved around either through exercise or through massage or skin brushing and diaphragmatic breathing as well, when you're really breathing into the bottom of your stomach. So anything you can do in that area is awesome. And you're just going to lower the inflammation, balance out your hormones, and really tackle this on a physical level. So now moving on to the mental side of things, which is where we often feel depression the most, of course, in the mind. And so there's two kind of things that tend to go on here. So it's mostly, for some people, having a really busy mind and having these thoughts going round and round and round. So that's kind of one cause of depression, where you just get into this negative thought spiral. And the other side is blocking those thoughts out completely, suppressing them, using methods of escapism, such as drinking or gaming or whatever it is that you do. And also, numbing them. So that kind of comes under drinking as well, but things like smoking cannabis as well, or whatever you might do in that area, can really numb some of these emotions. So moving lastly onto the spiritual side of what might be causing this depression, sometimes when we go through life kind of suppressing these emotions, they get trapped and stuck in the body, especially if they are rooted in a traumatic event that hasn't been processed properly. And for women more so, this tends to get stored in the yoni and in the hips and all of that. So that's one thing to consider. And the other side of this is, I find that for myself personally, and a lot of people I speak to, is that depression comes along with this disconnection from something greater than yourself. And that doesn't have to be like a higher power or God, if that's not really what you believe in or what you subscribe to. But it can even just be to family and friends, community, nature, whatever like spirituality means for you is completely fine. So moving on to some quick fixes, and I'm just going to run through these really briefly because they're more just examples of things that you can do, and everyone's got their own thing that really works for them. So moving your body to kind of get that stuck energy out of you. You can do that with dance, just free dancing, moving however you need to. Obviously your yoga asanas, your poses really help. Shaking the body as well, just giving it a good old wiggle. Singing, expressing through the throat is really, really helpful. It kind of vibrates you from the inside out. Walking in nature as well, just literally standing outside and taking a few deep breaths, that fresh air and that sunlight. In fact, getting some sun on you and boosting up that is just a massive, massive thing. I'm sure you've heard that people get more depressed in the winter and the autumn compared to spring and summer. So even if it is the middle of winter, just getting a little bit of sunlight on you can be really, really helpful. Going through a list of things that you're grateful for can just help to kind of switch the mood around a little bit. Smiling, even if you don't feel like it, it releases chemicals in your body that make you think you're happy. So that's just like a little trick. I know it's not always easy. And finally, I have hugs, which are amazing for releasing oxytocin, especially if you can do a really long, like 20-second hug. And hanging out with your girl mates as well is really good for actually boosting progesterone, which is really good in that second half of the cycle. So that's our quick fixes. Now going into some more long-term things around this that do take a lot of work, and I can't emphasize enough how much easier it is to do this when you've got support and people to hold you accountable. So again, whether that's friends, family, therapists, any like alternative practitioner as well, coaches, life coaches. I'm obviously here as a coach if you want help from me, but you've got loads and loads of options there. So just reach out to people, even if it's your grandma, like whoever it is, get them to help you with this, like let them know what's going on and get them to hold you accountable to implementing these long-term changes. So first of all, balancing estrogen dominance in the body to allow you to have more progesterone in that second half of the cycle. And I've got other videos on this which I'd recommend watching. So the cramps video, I really dive into estrogen dominance. So yeah, check that one out. The common symptoms, causes and treatments of cramps. And I talk a lot about that in that video. So the next thing is having activity, physical activity that goes along with your cycle. So I find that in the first and so my spring and my summer, the first half of my cycle, I love doing these like cardio dance workouts on YouTube. I'll get the reggaeton going or the like Latin dancing or like Caribbean vibes. It just really gets me excited and perks me up. However, I find that almost impossible to do when I come into the second half of my cycle. So I tend to do a lot more walking in nature, even like a bit of power walking if I still want to get a sweat on. Dance in a more relaxed kind of way, your yoga asanas, poses as well. And that's just really helpful to like meet yourself where you're at and don't try and like force yourself to go 100% at every point in your cycle, because you'll probably end up fighting yourself. And if you're a really high activity person, you might be able to do, you know, go for runs and stuff the whole way through your cycle, and that's really awesome. But if you're like me and you're a bit more of a chiller, then it's really important to recognize where you're at, what you want to do, and then do that, and don't be hard on yourself for not doing whatever you were doing a couple of weeks ago. So that's that side of things. Try to eat a really clean diet, and I'm always a fan of crowding out instead of focusing on what you can't have. So eat loads of delicious like fruit and veggies, get excited about it, drink water, your herbal teas that will perk you up a bit, like Damiana. There's lots of other things you can have. Just type in like teas that make you happy. Maca powder, mushroom powder as well. Drop those into some smoothies, get some berries going on. So get excited about what you can have, and you'll just naturally obviously have less room in your stomach for the things that you can't have. And if you do have those things, fine. Doesn't matter really. This is a work in progress. But yeah, just try and crowd them out. So for example, I'm an absolute chocolate fiend, and this gets so bad for me in my premenstrual phase. So I've always got access to cacao in all kinds of forms, whether it's like cacao nut butter, cacao brownies, or just straight up cacao, ceremonial cacao as well is really cool. So just find a way to still have those things that you love, but in a healthier way, and have them like at arm's reach. Because if you've got an option between like going to the shops to get, I don't know, like a bar of dairy milk or something, or to, you know, make some homemade stuff, you're probably just going to want to like nip out and get the thing that you want. So make this stuff, have it in your freezer, have it ready to go when you come into this phase of your cycle, so you've got the good stuff on hand. So, and also just thinking about those toxins, so thinking about maybe switching to natural cosmetics and natural cleaning products just to help with the inflammation and the balancing of the hormones. So moving on to the mental side of things, for those of you that really struggle with having that really busy mind and things going round and round and round, which was absolutely me in the mornings, I found, and this is, you know, proven by research, that journaling in the mornings can make a massive, massive difference to your day. And when I say journaling, I mean just free writing. So literally whatever comes to mind, whatever words it is, just write it down. Don't think too much about sentence structure or punctuation or any of that. Literally just write down whatever's coming to mind. And if you get stuck, just keep writing, I don't know what to write, until something else comes to mind. And you'll find that like a random word will just flash into your head, and it's something that's coming from the subconscious forward to your conscious mind. So just write that down, go with it, and you'll be honestly shocked at what comes out sometimes. These things that you realize you've been harboring. And yeah, it's great to read it through afterwards and just recognize what's going on for you. And yeah, it just helps it going like round, helps to stop it going round and round in your head and get it down on paper. The other side of things is for those of us that are into the kind of numbing out escapism, which was definitely me. I really struggled with addiction because of this. So the turning point for me was really learning to feel my emotions in my body instead of in my mind. And I'll share a deeper video about this another time because it's quite a long exercise. And it is something I tend to support and coach people through because a lot can come up and sometimes you just need someone there. So the essence of it is basically just feeling where the emotions are in your body, the density, and just breathing into that space, allowing it to be there, learning to sit with the pain and allow it to dissolve and dissipate in its own time instead of trying to force it down. And what women tend to do is we force it down, down, down into our yonis, and then these things come up really strongly in the premenstrual phase because there's all kinds of stuff going on biologically then. So that's kind of the mental side of things in the brain. But I would also say to really focus on career and relationships, because it's all very well and good doing all of this stuff, but if you hate your job and you hate your partner, you're gonna feel terrible all the time. So again, this is something I really go into depth with people with, but just ask yourself the question, am I in this job or in this relationship because my head is telling me it's what I have to do? Or am I doing it because my heart is shining in this relationship or this job and I love turning up every day? And it's not necessarily always about dumping your boyfriend or your girlfriend or changing jobs. It can be about finding ways to reconnect or learn to love your job. So yeah, don't throw your whole life out just because of something I've said, but just have a think about how you might be able to make changes in those areas, or maybe they do just need to be thrown out as well. So we'll see. So moving on to spiritual side of things, it's really important to connect to things greater than yourself. As I was talking about, this could be family, friends, nature, or the divine. If you believe in that, and it doesn't matter if you don't, there's always things that you can connect to. And I found that when I was really, really struggling with depression and addiction as well, I would ask myself every day, okay, do I want to be addicted today to smoking and all of that? Or do I want to be connected? So it would be a choice of, okay, do I roll up or do I sit and meditate for a little bit? And this took me like a year of constantly asking myself this question, having lots of slip-ups, but eventually I was choosing more and more and more to connect, and it actually became harder to go down that other route of addiction, because once you start seeing the light and seeing your heart shine, it's harder to dampen that down. Possibly haven't explained that very well. It's quite a deep thought, I suppose, for me to try and put across, but I hope that kind of makes sense in some way. So yeah, that is everything about this, and I'd love to hear any questions or just thoughts that you have about this. You can even post them in the comments underneath or share a post in the group as well. And I think it's just so helpful for us to support each other with the struggles we're going through, let people know, so that people don't feel so alone and so like it's only me that's going through this and I'm an awful person, because that self-loathing really comes along with depression. So to see that other people are going through similar things and maybe strategies that they're trying and things that work for them can be really inspiring. So I can't encourage you enough to share what you're going through, as I said, in the comments or in a brand new post. That would be really awesome. And next week we'll be having a similar-ish discussion, but more about premenstrual anger, and again the causes, the quick fixes and the treatments for that. Same time next week, Wednesday midday UK time, or another time if you're somewhere else in the world. All right, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments if you've liked it. And yeah, love you so much. I'm always here for support, even if you just want to drop me a quick message and we can have a little chat. Alrighty, I'll see you next week. Bye for now.